Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome into another edition of Slo Ur Roll. I am Dominic Lorenzano, and listen, we got some big topics. Lane Kiffin accepts a job at LSU. What is going on at Penn State and their coaching search? The Pats look primed and ready to make a serious run at appearing in a Super Bowl. We'll talk about that. I know they lost last night, but let's go over. Everyone loves to rip on the Cowboys as if they're like the Cleveland Browns or something. Jerry Jones should be taking a victory lap right now, and a few other topics. We'll talk about Sonny Gray going to the Red Sox. But with that, let's start with some of the biggest news of the football weekend, the turkey weekend and everything. Lane Kiffin accepting the job at LSU. Now, it's funny to me, only in sports would we ever rip a guy for leaving a job for a better job with better pay, a promotion, and better resources. Only in sports would we ever rip somebody for doing that. And yet all these people are doing this. It's honestly one of the more hypocritical things I've ever seen. And yes, parts of it look ugly because he left for a fellow rival in the SEC. He left when his team was on the precipice of making it to the college football playoff. But it's still a ridiculous take by all these people. And another very disingenuous comment, especially from people who literally follow college football. Now, listen, if Stephen A. Smith, who has to cover a million sports, is on a debate show, or some national pundits that don't do college football a ton, is one thing. But for people who cover college football to be blasting this individual because he left when his team was about to be in the college football playoff, and they have a chance to win a national title. They don't have a chance to win a national title. Ole Miss does not have a single player on their defensive line who is going to get drafted by an NFL team. Name me any college football team who has had that little, has not a single defensive lineman, right, be an NFL draft prospect and has won a national title. I don't think it's never happened. And at times in their offensive line literally got beat against LSU. Like up front, they're not big enough. They're just not big enough. Now, listen, they have recruited some great skilled players. Lane is a hell of an offensive coordinator, a great, clever play caller. They spend some money in the portal, but they don't get the Jimmies and the Joes up front, especially not this team. Now, last year's team, I honestly think was a little bit better than this year's team. That's just the way the schedule broke. LSU was a mess by the time they played them. LSU was better last year when Ole Miss played them, and they had to play them in Baton Rouge. But, they don't have the Jimmies and the Joes up front. And no team, no college football team who hasn't had that has ever won a national title, much less be in a 12-team playoff and have to win multiple playoff games. It's just not going to happen. So I find that take by some of these people to be hilarious and completely disingenuous. But that's where we are. And it's a great story. I think it's great for college football. Everyone has an opinion. It gets people interested. The simple fact is, and this is another take that I think is ridiculous. Everyone's like, well, Ole Miss is not a better job in today's day and age. Indiana's winning. Look at Vanderbilt. In this NIL era, you don't have to be a traditional blue blood. And while that is true to an extent, what you do need is a ton of money if you're not going to be a blue blood. You know why Vanderbilt's really good right now? Despite the fact that, Diego Pavia, a bunch of experience, and the coach is really good. But you know what they just did? They just signed a 5-star quarterback recruit in this year's recruiting class. Do you know why Vanderbilt can do that? Because they're in downtown Nashville. And Nashville has a booming economy and a ton of money. Indiana's got a lot of money. Texas Tech has a big oil tycoon who went to the school and played football, funding their football operations. That's why they're able to do that. Oxford doesn't have anything like that. He's in Oxford, Mississippi at Ole Miss. And yes, they have some money and they're very willing to spend it. That's why they've spent big money in the portal, but he's never had a top 5 recruiting class. I don't know if he's had a top 10 even recruiting class at Ole Miss. I'd have to go and check that. If he has, it was probably only once, but I doubt he even has. So, yes, in this era of college football, it is a little different. You don't have to be a traditional blue blood, but you have to be in a place that has a ton of money. And like I said, Nashville, booming economy. actual big businesses who would line up to give the school money because they get advertisement and they have a stadium in downtown. They have the stadium in Nashville, in the city of Nashville. And if they get really good and they start playing big college football games in a booming city like Nashville, that's going to make these businesses money. They will be lining up to give Vanderbilt money. They already have. Indiana is a huge school, right? Very nice alumni. Like, Indiana has some money. That's the reason why they gave Kurt Signetti all that money to stay there when Penn State tried to poach him. Like, Oxford, Mississippi doesn't have that. So LSU is a way better job than Ole Miss. Even in this current era, it is. And you know what was the biggest signal of that? Lane Kiffin's been at LSU for a couple of days. I mean, he knew he was probably going to take the job well before, but like he's been here a week now or whatever it is, less than that. They signed 3 defensive linemen in this recruiting class on signing day, which was yesterday, that are all in ESPN's top 50. 3 defensive linemen that would never go to Ole Miss, that he never got at Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin's been here an hour and he already did it because LSU's a better job than Ole Miss. And that's the sad reality. For everybody else who wants to be up in arms and pissed off at Lane Kiffin about this, I think is so hypocritical. Now listen, Ole Miss fans can be as mad as they want. I understand that. They're emotional about this. They feel like they got dumped. I get it. But everybody else, if you don't have ties to Ole Miss and you're sitting here just ripping Lane Kiffin, calling him a POS, then I think you're ridiculous. Because again, only in sports would we ever rip a dude for leaving a job for a better job with more money, a promotion, more resources. Nobody would ever rip somebody for doing that, for the most part. So that's where we are with the Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss things. So far as an LSU sort of insider on this, Lane's going to have to get some things right. I don't like that he hasn't announced that Corey Raymonds and Frank Wilson are going to be on the staff yet or not, because this is the mistake that Brian Kelly made, was he flushed the building. Like when he got there, he just replaced everyone in the building with his own people, recruiting coordinators, position coaches. It didn't matter. He flushed them all out, which means he flushed Louisiana out of the building. And what he didn't understand is that you kind of need guys like that if you're going to draw that fence around the state of Louisiana that has immense talent. I think it has the most NFL players per capita right now of any state in the United States. So if you want to build that fence, you need people with those connections to Louisiana. Like Frank Wilson is a legendary figure in Louisiana. He coached high school football at one point before his college career. He has great relationships with coaches all over the state, particularly at the big ones like Edna Carr, whereas this 5-star defensive tackle who's the best in the country, that's where he went to school. So Frank Wilson has relationships like that. Corey Raymonds has relationships like that with all the high school coaches. And so you need guys there to build that fence. You want to build that. You want to lock down the city of New Orleans. You want to build that fence up to Alexandria and all the way back down to Lake Charles and just wall that area off from everybody else on the outside. And that's how you win national titles. And they've done it multiple times, so you know it works. So you need guys like Frank Wilson and Corey Raymonds on the staff, because not only do they have great relationships with the recruits that you do know you know what they can also do? The minute the high school coach, before the season has started, maybe there was some kid who didn't start last year, who nobody knows about, late bloomer, put on 30 pounds maybe in the offseason, heading into his junior season or his sophomore season, and coach will text a guy like Frank or Corey and say, keep an eye out for this kid. I think he's going to start for us this year now. He's going to be really good. And no one was talking about him before, but I think this kid's got a real chance. So when you got guys like Frank and Corey, you can get a leg up on everybody else because the coaches are going to tell them. Corey or Frank reaches out a text to any of those guys before the season starts. What do you think about your team this year? Anything I need to know? Do you guys, any surprise guys? And guys like Corey and Frank are going to know that before anybody else. So, I suspect that Corey Raymonds will remain on the staff. I don't know if Frank Wilson is. because he was the running back coach, and Lane wants his guy at Ole Miss, Kevin Smith, I believe is his name, who's been with Lane for a long time. And I don't know if there's another position coach available at this point to put Frank Wilson in. So I really don't know if Frank's going to stay on the staff. I personally would love to see him stay on the staff. I think it'd be better that he would stay on the staff. I think there's probably more that Frank can add to the table than Kevin Smith can because of those connections in Louisiana. But, I mean, clearly, listen, Lane was able to get this 5-star defensive tackle to sign on signing day when it was wavering for a little bit, despite the fact that it doesn't seem like he promised the kid Frank Wilson would be on the staff. I guess we'll find out in the next couple of days. But Lane was able to keep him despite the fact that Blake Baker is in line to maybe get the Tulane job, and we don't know if Frank's going to have a job here or not. So, I mean, listen, Lane was able to make it work that time for that one, so maybe he can make it work. But I would say it's a mistake to flush out everyone in the building, and it's the same mistake that Brian Kelly made, and he paid for it. He tried to correct course later on, but it was a little bit too late for him. So, but yeah, those are just my thoughts on the LSU situation, the way the media has handled it, and obviously, like I said, just the nitty-gritty, too, of him now in that job. Moving on to another big program who does not have a coach, though, and that is Penn State. Now, I will not say that I didn't think James Franklin should be fired. I did think he should be fired because it had been long enough of just spinning the tires and never getting to that next step. So I understood the firing of James Franklin. Here's the problem. If you're going to fire James Franklin or any coach who has been succeeding at the level that that James was, 10, 11 win seasons on the precipice of making national championships, if you're going to fire someone like that, then you better have a solid contingency plan in place that you already worked on, and you must feel extremely confident, not just in yourself, but have literal information that makes you think you're going to get that guy. And clearly Penn State did not have that. Penn State essentially has come off now in this thing as the child that threw a temper tantrum and never thought about anything afterwards. Like, that's how the firing of James feels now. It didn't feel like, all right, we're making an educated decision to move on because we know we can find something to maybe get us to the next step. No, it feels like you were angry, your boosters were angry, your fan base was angry, you lost a couple games you shouldn't have lost, and you just acted out as if you were in a tantrum and fired the guy. This is one of the biggest, if not maybe the biggest disaster I've ever seen in college football for a coaching search. They still don't have a coach. Everybody has a coach. And Penn State is supposed to be a top 20 job, top 20 program in the country. They view themselves probably well above that. They probably view themselves as a top 10 job. But this is an unmitigated disaster. They have tried to poach multiple coaches away from other places. They have all said no and got pay increases, like Kalani Sataki. I believe they were interested in John Summerall as well. For some reason, they don't want Matt Campbell. Probably going to have to settle for Matt Campbell, or you're probably going to have to hire the interim guy. But at this time now, post-signing day, for the first signing day, Penn State only has 2 recruits in this upcoming class. They have 2 committed recruits in this upcoming class. That's below some FCF schools. Penn State is... This is beyond embarrassing. It's beyond even disaster. It's one of the largest disasters you'll ever see in this sport. It is bad right now in Happy Valley. It is not a happy place to be. And they're probably going to have to spend a bunch of money on a coach unless they hire the interim guy. Then they're going to go and have to spend millions of dollars in the portal just to save face to fill out the roster because they've lost everybody. And the worst part of this is that Penn State fired their coach way before everybody else. And the idea was, well, they're going to get a leg up in the coaching search. They're going to start before everybody else is. And you're still sitting here in December with no head coach. The AD cannot be long for this program at this point. But I mean, I don't know what they're going to go do from here. I suspect they're probably going to have to settle and hire the interim guy. And that's probably what I would do. And honestly, they probably should have done it a couple of days ago because you've already destroyed this year's recruiting class. So to stop it from getting any worse, they probably need to just make the interim coach, who I think it's Terry Smith. They need to make him the head coach at this point. And I'm sure that's not what they wanted. You don't want to fire James Franklin, a guy, again, who was winning 10, 11 games, just to then go with someone who was on his staff and hadn't been a head coach yet. So, I mean, as embarrassing as a coaching search as there has ever been, is what's going on for Penn State right now. And to add insult to injury, James Franklin has flipped, I believe, 4 or 5 guys who were going to go to Penn State in this next recruiting class. He's flipped them to come with him to Blackburg, or whatever they call it, Blackburg, for the Virginia Tech job, which I thought the Virginia Tech job was a terrible job. I'm not going to lie. With what James has done recruiting-wise so far, maybe it's a better job than I realized. So it's just an unmitigated disaster. So with that, we're going to take a quick break before we get into some NFL talk, so stick with us, guys. And we are back at Slow Your Roll, moving on to some NFL talk. Let's start with the hometown Patriots, who once again destroy the New York Giants on Monday Night Football. They look like they are poised and ready to maybe be the number 1 overall seed in the AFC. I don't know exactly how the tiebreaker works with the Broncos if they end up with the same record, but that's what it looks like they're headed to right now. And I mean, big picture, I want to talk about the bigger picture other than just this year, though I will say I am a true believer that this team can make the AFC Championship and potentially win it and make the Super Bowl. Now, listen, if they were up against the Rams or most of the teams that can come out of the NFC right now, I'm going to pick against them in a Super Bowl. If KC, I'm not going to lie, if Kansas City finds a way to sneak into the playoffs and comes to Foxborough and plays the Pats in the playoffs, I'm probably going to pick Kansas City simply on it's Andy, it's Patrick, it's the playoffs experience. But other than Kansas City, could the Pats beat the Broncos? Probably. Their passing game's pretty inconsistent. Be a tough matchup, especially if we had to go to Denver. But if they came here with how inconsistent that Bo Nix is and that passing game, and in general their offense, who's to say we can't win that game? We probably could. The Bills are... I don't think the Bills are all that good. I think they're extremely Josh Allen dependent, and that's most of it. The Ravens, Lamar is clearly not healthy, so they are not the same team. The Chargers, obviously, injuries. They'll be a wild card team anyway, too. So, the AFC is completely wide open. So for the first time this year, during this incredible season the Pats are having, mostly against garbage teams, but listen, this is the NFL. Week in and week out, anyone can beat you. If they were a bad team, they would not have this good of a record. They might have, if they were an average to decent team, they'd have 8 wins or 7 wins or something like that. They wouldn't be where they are right now. So you can say what you want about the schedule. When you're winning this much, and a lot of them pretty convincingly, you have to be a pretty good football team. So this is the first time this year that I will say I do think this Patriots team is capable of winning the AFC. Again, do not want to see the Chiefs. I'd probably have to pick Kansas City, even if they came to Foxborough, simply on Pat, Andy, experience, all that kind of stuff. But I think the bigger picture now that people need to talk about is, even if they didn't make a Super Bowl this year, my God, does this look like we have a Super Bowl window that's going to be open for a long time? And it's not just because of Drake May, who looks incredible, looks like a superstar. But it's also everyone on the roster is young. Even on the defense, most of these guys are only in their second or third year. Let's talk about the weapons now that look pretty good. Kayshon Boutte hadn't been in the league that long. The Washington State kid, Williams, who's a burner, he's a rookie. Travion Henderson, rookie. Will Campbell, the left tackle, rookie. If you look around, everyone is young and inexpensive, and that is how you build a Super Bowl winner, because as we've seen going on in the AFC right now, the Bills have gotten expensive. They're not as good. Kansas City's gotten expensive. They're not as good. Baltimore's gotten expensive. They're not as good. This is how you win Super Bowls and keep that window open for a long time, when the guys are young and inexpensive. Christian Gonzalez is like the oldest one, I feel like, on this team. And here's the other thing that never gets talked about enough: a built-in crazy advantage that the Patriots have. Your offensive coordinator, who is damn good at his job and one of the best in the entire league, is never leaving. He's never getting another NFL head coaching job ever again. I've heard maybe he could get a college job, but I doubt it. It's been that toxic every time he's gotten one. He's just the best number 2 of all time. He's never leaving. Go ask Dan Campbell what it's like when your coordinators leave. How do the Eagles look when they lose coordinators? Oh, wait, so they barely make the playoffs. They lose to the Bucs. They finish the year losing like 5 or 6 straight. Next year, they get good coordinators in Vic Fangio and Kellen Moore. They win a Super Bowl. This year, those guys leave. Well, Vic didn't leave, but Kellen Moore left. They let Nick hire the OC. Clearly, he whiffed on it again. How do they look? They're falling apart. So, like, coordinators are massively, massively important, especially if your head coach is not some offensive play caller, which Mike Vrabel is not. So that is an amazing built-in advantage that I feel like nobody ever talks about enough. The Pats offensive coordinator is never going to leave. We're just never going to lose that brain trust in the building, because he's never getting a head coaching job again. I am pretty confident that this version of the Patriots, not as in this season, but this core of players and coaches, I do feel like in the next couple of years is going to win a Super Bowl. This is how dynasties feel like they start. Not that I want to say we're going to win multiple, that's too far. But with this core together, at this age, all of them inexpensive, Mike Vrabel, who's done plenty of winning before he got here, and an offensive coordinator who's never going to leave, I feel pretty confident that at some point Mike Vrabel and Drake May and Josh McDaniels are probably going to host a Super Bowl trophy, especially in this era now of everybody who, if your quarterback is even, half decent, seems like they get some big contract that then hampers what you can do with the roster for the rest of the contract's tenure. So the big picture is this New England team now is primed to go on a run for the next couple of years. I can't imagine how depressing it is to be like a Dolphins fan or a Jets fan or a Bills fan. Like the Pats fans, the bitching and complaining that they did for 3 or 4 years just to already be back. We're just already back. Imagine that. But Buffalo, you have Josh Allen, a league MVP, one of the greatest physical specimens at the quarterback position we've ever seen, and you don't win a Super Bowl. And now that Josh has gotten expensive, the roster's gotten old, and you look up and, oh my God, the team that beat us into the ground for over a decade in the Pats is literally back again just 3-4 years later, and we missed our window. The Dolphins and the Jets never got close to doing anything with that window, but it's the same for them. We had this brief period of time where the team that destroyed us for over a decade was on the lull, and then they're just right back. Just right back. When meanwhile, we've been doing, just nothing. Just fuck all. Just trying to rebuild this team. Going through a rebuild for like 10 years, nothing to show for it. The Jets made a couple of playoff games. I believe they made an AFC championship once with Rex Ryan. That's about it. Bills obviously have made AFC championships only to just lose to the Chiefs. So I can't imagine how depressing it is to be a Jets or a Bills fan, particularly a Bills fan right now. It's crazy. It's crazy how fast things can change in the NFL, but it's also crazy, as they say, even as the more things change, the more they stay the same. And if your ownership isn't that good and your organization's just not that good, and you have teams in your division with great ownership and great structure, funny how it works out just a couple of years later after they have to go through a little bit of a soft rebuild. They're back on top, and you're looking straight up at them, just wondering what you did with the last 4 years. So that's the situation that those AFC teams find themselves in. But the big picture is just what a time to be a Patriots fan. And I'm not some big Pats homer. Like, I'm not. It's taken me forever to get on the bandwagon this much. I treat the NFL kind of like a job more than I do as a fan. But, I mean, it's kind of undeniable, I feel like, at this point, just how high the arrow is trending up for the New England Patriots. And, yeah, get ready, guys. Everyone's going to hate us again soon. Moving on to another guy that people seem to hate, and I've never understood why they hate him as much as they do. I feel like Jerry Jones, and I was a little guilty of this in the offseason because it did feel like Jerry had lost a step. The hiring Brian Schottenheimer, who wasn't even going to get an offensive coordinator job with anybody else. There were things about Jerry that did seem like he was losing it. But I feel like people try to bang on Jerry Jones for the longest time and just bang on the Cowboys like they're the Browns or something. And I've always said they never are. They're usually competitive. They had a couple of bad teams, like Romo got hurt or something, or I don't know. But they're usually pretty competitive. Now, they're usually good enough to beat the bad teams and blow them out, beat decent to mediocre teams, and then always lose against the best of the best. And sometimes can lose in ugly fashion. Thinking about that Green Bay game in the playoffs a couple of years ago, the sort of Matt LaFleur, Jordan Love coming out party. But they've always been viable. They've always been decent. They're a little dramatic. They're a little much. Jerry gets involved sometimes in things he shouldn't get in. Sometimes you don't really know if the head coach is the boss or if you should just go to Jerry. There are some structural issues. But generally, they're still a pretty well-run organization. Pretty well-run. Again, a little dramatic, a little much at times, but they're not the Browns. They're not the Jets. They're not the Dolphins. And Jerry this year needs to take a victory lap, because why anyone hated the Micah Parsons move as much as they did, I did not understand, because their defense wasn't good with him and they needed the picks. And again, Dak's expensive. They have guys, CeeDee Lamb got a contract, CeeDee's expensive. They are paying big money to some guys, so they couldn't pay Micah more money. And again, Micah is a great pass rusher, really good. Against the run, he's not that great. He's not exactly a complete player. He's a highlight reel player. He's a splash player. He's a great player to have when you're leading late in the game, because obviously the other team has to throw. But he's not a complete player. He's not Lawrence Taylor or something. And clearly, they needed the draft picks. They needed the financial flexibility. And so he made the move. And that was one I agreed with Jerry the entire time on. But everyone hated the move for some reason. The George Pickens one I thought would work, but it was a bit interesting. That has been way better than I ever thought. Some people question that move. And then, with the financial flexibility given to them by moving on from Micah Parsons, he goes and he signs Kenny Clark and Quentin Williams. And they immediately drastically improve what was clearly the worst part of their defense so far this season, which was their run defense. Now, listen, with this loss to Detroit, they still might not make the playoffs. But we just talked about the Pats' trajectory. Let's talk about the Cowboys' trajectory. They have a bunch of picks now. I think they have 2 first-round picks next year. So, you already solved the interior of your defense. You can go get a pass rusher, and you could probably go draft a corner or an offensive lineman, whatever it is that they feel they need the most. But, your quarterback is set with Dak Prescott. Your weapons are awesome. George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb, the tight end Ferguson is pretty good. This kid Williams as a running back has been very productive. So what do you need to attack? Linebacker, pass rusher, secondary, offensive line. But you got two picks in the first round next year. They're in a great spot now. And clearly Brian Schottenheimer is a very competent coach. I mean, they're awesome. I think Dak's probably having his best year ever. Their offense is awesome. And, the defense had some holes, but they added Kenny and Quentin Williams, and certainly things are working pretty well. I mean, they beat the Eagles and the Chiefs in the last 2 weeks. I mean, listen, they've played the Chiefs, the Eagles, and the Lions. Those are 3 Super Bowl caliber teams over the last couple of years. Not as much this year. We'll see if Philly can right the ship. Detroit, not the same without Ben Johnson, but they're still uberly talented, as you saw last night. And the Chiefs are the Chiefs, who, again, have been the last 3 Super Bowls. Or 3 of the last 4, or whatever it is. So that's who you just went up against the last 3 weeks. And you went 2-1. And even if you don't make the playoffs, like I said, Quinton's not going anywhere. Kenny Clark's not going anywhere. You're not going to let Pickens go anywhere. Lamb's under contract. Dak's under contract. And you have 2 first-round picks next year. So they're in an awesome spot. And anyone who criticized Jerry Jones this past season, Jerry should be taking a victory lap. Jerry should be just dancing on people's graves right now. So props to Jerry Jones, the Dallas Cowboys. And again, for everyone who wants to talk about them like they're just the worst thing in the NFL, it's just ridiculous. They're usually 9, 10, 11, sometimes 12-win team who makes the playoffs more often than not and is viable and is decent to watch. They're interesting. They put up points. They win games. They usually win a playoff game. Like, people go too much on the Jerry Jones hatred. So, shifting gears away for a second from football, we're going to talk a little bit of baseball real quick. Because the Red Sox got Sonny Gray from the Cardinals, who, great name. I think he looked pretty washed at the end of the year last year. They got Juan Oviedo from the Pirates. We traded him, the Garcia kid. I actually don't mind that move because I kind of like Oviedo's stuff, higher upside. The bigger issue now with both of these moves is it appears as if John Henry and the Red Sox still want to maneuver as if they're a small market team. And I thought there was a chance that after all the backlash, after 3 or 4 seasons of not spending a ton of money and a team now that is young and on the upswing, I thought maybe this was a chance that they were finally going to open up the pockets and they were finally going to spend some money in the offseason and operate like the Boston Red Sox, a team that's top 5 in revenue in baseball, probably top 10 in revenue in all of sports, a way that a team like that should operate. But it doesn't look that way. It unfortunately looks like more of the same. And it's pretty ridiculous and it's pretty disheartening. And for all the people who want to rip on the Dodgers, by the way, like, they just buy World Series. Yeah. But you know who also could buy World Series? The Yankees could. The Mets tried to. The Red Sox could if they wanted to. Atlanta had kind of bought a World Series a little bit. Now they had to do it in season because a bunch of people got hurt, but they spent money to retool the outfield and everything. Like, plenty of teams can buy World Series. The Dodgers are just better at it than everybody else. They make smarter decisions. The Yankees do nothing but buy home run hitters and have a completely unbalanced roster, and they don't win World Series. The Mets threw a bunch of money at a bunch of people who were way too old to depend on as much as they did 2 years ago, and try to win that way. So, like, the Dodgers are not the only ones spending money. The Dodgers aren't winning World Series simply just because they have more money than everybody else. It's part of it. I don't know if the Ohtani contract should have been allowed. That felt ridiculous to me. I feel like baseball should have stepped in on that one. But at the end of the day, the Dodgers win World Series because they're better with the money than anybody else. They're just smarter than everybody else. And it pains me to say it because I don't like them. But again, the Mets have spent millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars over the last 2 to 3 years. Like, the Yankees spend a lot of money. And again, the Sox could spend a lot of money, but John Henry is just a cheap ass. So either be mad that your front office is dumb or that your owner is a cheapskate. And right now for Boston, you're in the second category that I just said, which is your owner is a cheapskate, because it's more of the same. Reclamation project Dustin May. That's what they did in the trade deadline. That didn't work. Walker Buehler. The Dodgers just let him go for nothing. But, oh, he's cheap. He used to be good. We'll just see if we can, buy low, high, low risk, high reward. Let's see if it works out. And now it's the same here. in the offseason. You go trade for Sonny Gray. The Cardinals are willing to pay a bunch of his salary so you can bring him in. Then get Juan Oviedo, guy with some upside. And again, I like that one. But it seems as if that's what they're going to do. Just low risk, high reward. Even though the chances of the reward being high are pretty damn low and we have plenty of money, we just don't want to spend it. So that's where we are with the Sox. I don't think these two moves make me think going into the winter meetings, it's literally going to be no different this offseason. And it pisses me off to no end as a Boston Red Sox fan, and should piss all Red Sox fans off because you pay astronomical prices in tickets, in beer and food to go to Fenway and the stadium, and you know they rake in a ton of money, and he does concerts there and everything. And anyone who does any sort of baseball trip always is going to go to Fenway. So even if the Sox fans tune out, he's still going to make money because the stadium's going to be packed with out-of-towners. And yet he's so unwilling to spend money like a top 5 organization, even though he's easily in the top 5 of revenue in his sport. So it's pathetic and it's sad. So that's where we're at, Boston Sox fans. I'm so sorry. I'm angry too. With that, we're going to take one last break, and when we come back, we're going to finish with the Eagles, so stick with us, guys. And we're back finishing up on this last topic, the Eagles. Now, it's very well known I am not a big Nick Sirianni fan, but I don't think most people are. Like, I think Nick Sirianni is one of the more ridiculous coaches in the entire NFL. I'm not really still sure to this day what he does. I know one thing he doesn't do well, which is hire coordinators. It's hilarious to me that they hired his coordinators when he first got the job. He had to hand over play calling duties to Shane Steichen. They finally got good. Then Steichen leaves. He takes another job. And then they let Nick hire the coordinator, who's Brian Johnson, and it's an absolute abject disaster. And this is all with Howie Roseman as the GM and a great roster, right? So they go through that disaster. It doesn't work. They barely sneak into the playoffs and get curb stomped in the very first game by a Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that was never going to go that far after that. And yet, so then they take it out of his hands again. They hire Kellen Moore to be the OC, and they win a Super Bowl. And then Kellen Moore leaves because he gets a head coaching job, and they let Nick do the offensive coordinator hiring again. And lo and behold, once again, it's not going well. The Eagles are in a bit of a free fall. Have they lost 2 or 3 straight? I know the horrendous stat is it's the most expensive offense in all of football. I think maybe in NFL history, and they lead the NFL in 3 and outs. That is so beyond damning. It's crazy. And they can't find a way to get A.J. Brown to have a good game, but have the offense have a good game. So they're spending a bunch of money on A.J. Brown, but they can't get him involved. Now, I think that's partially the quarterback's fault, but listen, it's not like Jalen Hurts is a worse player today than he was last year, and yet Kellen Moore was able to figure it out. So as much as I'm never been a huge Jalen fan, part of it's Jalen, but I think most of it's the coaching. And again, you let Nick Sirianni hire the OC, and Nick is incapable of calling plays himself. So if it's going wrong, he can't fix it the way somebody else could step in. Even Dan Campbell started calling plays and fixed it at least a little bit. Like Nick Sirianni is just unable to do that. The Eagles have lost 2 straight. They lead all of the NFL in 3 and outs, and it's just a disaster again. And like, this is not a normal organization. They fired Andy Reid at one point. Nick Sirianni was on the hot seat 2 years ago a little bit. Like, Howie is a bigger deal. He runs the team. I think we all give him more credit than the head coach. And we should, because I think he's more important to this team than the head coach. But like, this is not a normal place. Philly's not a normal city, and their sports teams certainly don't run like normal sports teams. I don't care that he won a Super Bowl last year. I think if it ended as horribly as it could this year, now I don't think it will. I think they're too talented to go in a complete free fall like they did 2 years ago. So I don't think it'll be as bad. But let's say they just lose out the rest of the way or lose out most of the games and miss the playoffs. I don't think Nick Sirianni is safe because I don't think the city of Philadelphia, I don't think the owner, and I don't think Howie Roseman view this team through the lens of Nick Sirianni as a big part of our success. And I don't think they should because it's mostly Howie. And the minute you ask Nick Sirianni to make coaching hires, he literally can't do it. He sucks at it. So there's no head coach that has less power than Nick Sirianni in the NFL. Current, like start of the year head coach. We're not counting interims. The Nick Sirianni, and again, like the age-old question, what does he actually do? I know he doesn't call plays. He's not some big scheme guy. At least with guys like the Harbaughs, they don't call plays, but they're great evaluators of talent and they're great evaluators of coaching talent. Well, Nick clearly isn't the second thing I said, and how he's doing all the drafting. Nick has no say in the drafting, so he's not some amazing talent evaluator either. So, what does he do? Not much, it seems like to me, other than just be the puppet, be the guy to get it all to work. I mean, clearly he must have some respect. He can set a culture at least a little bit. But I do think, he had the benefit of a lot of just high-end veteran players that set the culture. And then winning itself set the culture even when some of those guys left, like Jason Kelsey or a Brandon Graham or, guys like that. So, and I will say, he does clearly have a high degree of ability to function in chaos, which is probably a prerequisite for the Philadelphia job because there's a lot of noise and a lot of chaos all the time. This A.J. Brown stuff has got to be distracting. But still, at the end of the day, if he doesn't right the ship, I don't actually think he's safe, even though he's won a Super Bowl. And I don't think he should be safe. And again, I don't think it's going to happen. And the other thing, A.J. Brown is not long for this team. A.J. Brown will be gone in the offseason. He knows it. Howie knows it at this point. I think everybody knows it. So A.J. will be gone. They'll have to figure everything else out after that. They're definitely going to have to improve the offensive line because Saquon just can't get going. And maybe Saquon's lost a step, but definitely part of it is the offensive line and Howie has always wanted to build this team through the O-line and the D-line. So they're going to have to find ability to fix that. But A.J. would give them that because A.J. would give them extra picks. But, as the Eagles go into this week, they're playing the Chargers on Monday night. If they lost that game, they would fall to 8-5. And still remaining on their schedule is, now, for them at least, Dallas losing last night was massive for them. They do have some easy games after that. They get Vegas at home. They have to go to Washington, which a horrendous defense. Then they have to go at Buffalo and they'll home again against Washington. So after this week, really the only hard game they have left is the Buffalo game. And Buffalo will probably be desperate because they're chasing the Patriots. So it lines up pretty well for Nick. So I think this is more a hypothetical topic and more of a topic going into next year that Nick has pressure if they're not that great again. And the other thing is, will they let him hire the OC? Probably not after they tried it a second time and it didn't work. But listen, if the season ends in a disaster, particularly considering how weak that schedule is, I don't think he'd be safe. But so that's the situation with Philadelphia. Philly fans, I'm sorry, take them out of your Super Bowl bubble. As long as they have these guys calling plays on offense, your offense is this inefficient in this day and age of the NFL, you're not capable of winning a Super Bowl, and you're certainly not capable of getting to a Super Bowl, especially with this season where the NFC, to me, feels loads better than the AFC. I think the Rams are my favorite to make the Super Bowl, but the Lions still have a ton of talent. Seattle is damn good and nearly beat the Rams. The NFC's, and I forgot about the Packers. A little weird during the middle of the season. It looks like they got it rolling. We'll see how they do with the Bears this week. But Green Bay's loaded, and they got Micah now, so the defense is pretty good. Philly to me is fourth best in the NFC at best at this point. So that's where the Eagles are right now. But you know what? This happens after you win a Super Bowl sometimes anyway. So, I don't really want to hear Philly fans cry foul. But all right. That has been it, though, for Slow Your Roll this week. Conference championships this week. Georgia, Alabama, the one I have my eye on the most. If Bama loses, it's going to be interesting. Do they make the playoff? Do they not? Because they'd have 3 losses. I tend to think that they'd make the playoff simply because the committee doesn't want to set a precedent that you get punished for losing your conference championship. But at the end of the day, the committee could say it doesn't really have to do with losing the conference championship. It has to do that you lost 2 games already, so that would be your 3rd loss. But whatever. Georgia should win that game. But again, it's tough. The game means more to Alabama than it does to Georgia. And Georgia can just, they see that red A and that red and white uniform, and they're not Georgia anymore. They just sort of shit themselves. So I don't know what's going on with that, if it's in their head. But Georgia should win this game easily. The other weird committee thing is, why is Notre Dame ahead of Miami when they both have 2 losses and Miami beat them? That's wild to me. Some crazy Notre Dame bias. And I hate Miami. But like, Notre Dame hasn't beaten anybody. Notre Dame's best win is a 3-loss USC team. The best thing about Notre Dame's schedule is they have 2 good losses. They lost to A&M and they lost to Miami. Great. But the fact that you'd be ranked ahead of Miami, even though you have the same record, is absurd. And I know Miami's losses are worse, but Miami's win over Notre Dame is a better win than any win Notre Dame has. So I thought that was wild by the committee to have Notre Dame ahead of Miami, but I digress. All right. Anyway, that has been it for Slow Your Roll, and have a great rest of your week, ladies and gentlemen.